All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm going to give it maybe a couple, maybe 30 more seconds to see if more folks will be joining us, just some stragglers left to log on. And then we'll go ahead and get started in maybe about a minute. Okay, I don't think I see any more joining us. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us here tonight. My name is Saad Amir. I work in public affairs for MSD, and I'll be helping facilitate this conversation. Thanks for joining us for the Brookshire Sanitary Relief Virtual Town Hall. We're going to go ahead and get started now with the presentation. And first off, let's go ahead and start off with what the roadmap of tonight is going to look like. So first and foremost, the first thing that I'm going to go over is kind of the platform that we're using and just the technology and ground rules for the questions. Next, I'll move into a very brief overview of MSD, who we are and what we do. And then I'll move it over into the conversation about the actual project, what we're here to discuss tonight. At that point, I'll introduce the project manager, the MSD project manager for this project, Deb Jarvis, who you might see on screen. I'll let her introduce herself once we get to that point. And then everything after that is going to be project specific. We'll talk about the details for the project, the restoration. We'll discuss some of the frequently asked questions that have been submitted to us. And then we'll move over into the Q&A feature, which I'll describe how you guys can participate in that in just a second. So first and foremost, obviously we are on the Zoom platform doing this virtual town hall. And you must have noticed by now that you are in what's called listen and view mode. And what that means is you can hear us and you can see us, but we cannot hear or see you. But that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. And there are several ways to engage with us throughout this presentation. So I think all of us that are attending at this point are on our computers. So if you're on a computer or a smartphone, if you wiggle your mouse if you're on a computer, or if you tap your screen if you're on a smartphone or a tablet, you'll see a black toolbar appear at the bottom of your screen. And one of the buttons on that black toolbar you'll see is Q&A. If you tap or click on that Q&A button, you'll see a chat box appear. And in that text box, you can go ahead and type in your questions to make sure we see them and respond to them. You can type in your questions at any point during the presentation. Doesn't have to be during the Q&A session. So any point you think of something throughout the presentation, go ahead and hit that Q&A button, and you can go ahead and type in your question. Someone that you don't see on screen that you will likely interact with if you are asking those questions is my colleague, Beth McCoy. Beth works in public affairs, and she's kind of handling the back end of this presentation. So she'll be responding to you on the Q&A feature if we're not answering your question live. So just some ground rules on that Q&A. So we're here to discuss the Brookshire project. And we'll only be answering questions live that deal with general project questions for that specific project, just in the interest of everyone else's time. So if you have a question that doesn't have to do with this project, something about billing, something about basement backups, anything like that, we still want you to ask it, and you go ahead and type it into the Q&A box, and that's where Beth will respond to you and let you know the best contact to get your question answered. Similarly, we're really only dealing with general questions for the project that really deal with more than one person in the project area. So if you have a question about your specific property, about how this project or construction will affect your specific property, that's the questions I would have as well. But in the interest of everyone's time, we're not going to take those live, but we still want you to put them in the Q&A box. And in that case, Beth will respond to you, let you know that we've got your information, we've got your contact information, and the project manager will be contacting you in the next couple of days to talk to you one-on-one about that specific question. The last thing I want to mention on this is when you do ask questions in the Q&A box, you'll notice that there is a thumbs up sign underneath each question after it's been posted. Everybody can see all the questions. If you see a question that you also want answered that someone else typed in, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button to let us know that that's where we should prioritize our Q&A. So now that we've discussed the virtual town hall platform, I'm going to go ahead and talk briefly about MSD, who we are and what we do. So obviously we're the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. We are a government utility that was voted into existence by the people of St. Louis County and St. Louis City. And in fact, actually, our service area includes all of the city and about 90% of St. Louis County. We have about 7 treatment plants, and they service over 350 million gallons of wastewater. They treat it every day. And with thousands of miles of sewers, combined or wastewater or stormwater, we're actually the 4th largest sewer system in the United States, and that's behind LA, New York, and Chicago. One of the things I really want to harp on this slide is the fact that MSD is actually 2 utilities in one. We handle wastewater, which is the water that comes from the drains in your house. So your toilet, your sink, your dishwasher, your washing machine. All of that water is conveyed into our sewer system, taken to those treatment plants, treated, and then released back into the environment. But MSD also handles stormwater. We also have stormwater responsibilities, and that's essentially the water that comes down, the rainwater that comes down, goes down into our curb inlets or other drains, and goes into our stormwater system and is released back into the environment. The one thing I want to mention about this is that there are 2 separate funding sources for wastewater projects and stormwater projects, and those fundings cannot be crossed. The reason why I want to mention that is because the project that we're here to talk about tonight, Brookshire, is a wastewater project. So we're really only going to be dealing with the wastewater system in this project. So that's just the general overview of MSD. Now we've got an idea of what MSD is. Let's go ahead and talk about the project we're here to discuss tonight, and that's Brookshire Sanitary Relief. I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Deb to introduce herself and talk about some of the other players in this project as well. Deb?
Hi, I'm Deb Jarvis, as Saad just said. On the screen, you can see my contact information, my email address, and the phone number. If you've got any project-specific questions, you can call me or send me an email, and I'll see that they get answered. Also, my field inspector for this project will be Jim Roth, and you'll see his email address up here. Also, the phone number, this is his old office number, so we'll need to change that. His office number is his cell number is 314-565-8310. So we'll get that changed on the homepage for the thing. Also, our contractor for this project is Fred M. Luth Company, and Dave Bodner is here with us tonight from Luth Company. He'll be the project manager with them, and we'll give you his contact information later in the presentation.
Thanks, Deb. All right, so let's move on to just a general overview of the project. So I'm just going to provide a brief general overview. And essentially what we're doing in your neighborhood is we're replacing older, smaller wastewater pipe with bigger, newer pipe. And the idea here is to increase the capacity that the sewer system in your neighborhood can hold, the amount of water it can hold, which will ultimately reduce basin backups and an overcharge system. So Deb, can you talk a little bit about the details, how much pipe we're putting in, the depth of the pipe, things like that?
Yes, we're putting in approximately 5,600 linear feet of pipe that ranges anywhere in diameter from 8 to 18 inches, and it's anywhere from 10 to 25 foot deep. The project's going to start around the 3485 Brookshire along the channel, and it'll run along the channel until it crosses Wedgwood in the 2300 block, and then it'll continue along the channel until it crosses Chadwick at 3005 Chadwick Drive. Then it'll also continue along the channel until it gets to the Ferguson Florissant School District on Cougar Drive.
Perfect. And I went ahead and just showed the map as well, just to give that a little bit better.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deb. Appreciate that. So again, the biggest benefit that we're seeing through this project is we're going to increase the capacity within this sewer system, and that'll mean that more water can flow through the system and ultimately not end up in basements or overcharging the system in general. So over here we see the general map of where the project is. It's the same map. It's just one straight line down where like Deb was saying, alongside the improved channel. It ends around Wedgwood on this side and picks up around Wedgwood over here as well. So it goes down to where Ferguson Florissant is down here. One of the things I wanted to mention on this slide is our tentative schedule. Right now, we are estimating that work will begin in this area in November of 2020, and it'll take approximately 1 year to finish the work as well. Deb, there has been some delay at this point because of some utility relocation to get this work started. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're working with Ameren to get a design to move about 6 utility poles. And once they get those utility poles moved, then we will move in and start our work.
And like you said, Deb, this is all along the improved channel. So this is really mostly in backyards.
That is correct.
All right, great. Thank you, Deb. Anything else we should mention on this?
I don't believe so.
All right, cool, thanks. Okay, so this actually shouldn't be the first time that you'll be hearing about this project. At least it's not the first time that we've sent out information regarding this project. So right now the project is in what's called the construction phase. And before a project can get to a construction phase, it has to go through the design phase. And this is where MSD and a team of engineers come up with the specifics of how the project needs to be designed. And a part of this process in the design phase is to solicit input from the neighborhood and also the municipalities that are involved and other entities that are involved within the project area. So we've actually started this process since 2018. There's been 3 notification letters sent out to all affected entities and residents since April 2018, and again up until July 2020 before this meeting. In fact, actually in May of 2018, there was a public meeting just like this, back when we could have in-person meetings, and that was during the design phase where we presented the design concept for the project to the public, specifically the residents within the area as well. So this really shouldn't be the first time that you're hearing it about the project, and we hope it's really not as well. So let's move on to what residents can expect. And this is the main question that I would have as a resident here as well. Like we said, the majority of the project is going to be running through backyards. So Deb, could you talk a little bit about that? I think actually before you get into that, the majority of the work is actually going to be done through open cut construction, which is digging through the surface of the ground. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about the work that could be expected in these backyards?
So what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll clear out any trees that need to be cleared out or brush or that type of thing. Then they'll dig to the depth that they need to put in the new pipe. Once they get done digging, they'll backfill, and then they will fine grade over it and then sod the area.
And Deb, can you talk a little bit about the equipment that might be expected throughout this project?
Yes, you'll more than likely see backhoes, skid steers, dump trucks. In the areas where they're going to cross the road, they will be saw cutting with the walk behind saw, and they will be using a breaker in that area also.
Okay, and you know, a lot of this work, there's going to be these trenches within the backyards. Can you talk a little bit about the safety measures put in place around those trenches?
As I said, they will be backfilling as they put the new pipe in, which will help some, but they will also have some orange construction fence that they'll put up to help alleviate being able to get up there next to the hoe. But just be aware that these are deep holes, right. So make sure that your kids aren't climbing the fence or getting over into that area.
Yeah, that's always a great recommendation. So you talked a little bit about how there will be some work being done in roadways. Can you talk about those roadways and maybe talk a little bit about the traffic control plan? Okay,
so in the roadways, we will actually have to close the road while we're working in the area of the 2300 block of Wedgwood and just off the side of 3005 Chadwick. Those roads will not be closed at the same time. They will be at different stages. They'll have one closed at a time, and when they do, there'll be alternate routes where you can get around the neighborhood. So just be aware that when that happens, it's going to take a little while for them to dig across there, put the pipe in, and they will backfill it the same day. But with Wedgewood and Chadwick, they're concrete streets. Mm-hmm. So they'll put the concrete in, and it will be right around a week before you'll be able to drive on it once the concrete's put in.
And like you said, this is not all happening at the same time, so there will be
That's
access.
Correct.
Okay, great. And Deb, you don't foresee any access issues to driveways or specific properties with this project, do you?
No, we don't. Most of the work is in the backyard, so there should be no driveway issues.
Okay, and we talked about doing a lot of this work in the backyard. The yards that we'll have to access to get to that backyard, those have already been determined and those residents have already been contacted. Is that correct?
I do believe so. Dave, can you tell me, have those addresses already been contacted where the work is going to be, the access is going to be performed?
Yeah, we sent out notifications to everybody who has a house that's on main line, let them know who we were, how they can contact us, and just to let them know that the project was coming.
Okay,
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, anything else we should mention about what residents can expect throughout construction?
Just be patient with us, and we're going to get ready. We're going to talk about the yard work in another slide, so I'll wait till then to mention that.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks, Deb. Okay, so this is just a picture of what a typical open cut project will look like. It's obviously not the project that we're talking about right now because these are in the front yards, but this kind of gives an idea of what the before, during, and after will look like. You'll notice that there are those orange fencing that Deb was talking about, and you'll see that restoration has taken place where our general district policy is to restore the disturbed services to previous or better conditions. And so you'll notice just a visual on that as well. But to talk a little bit more about specifically of what that restoration will look like, Deb, I thought we could start off with just the streets restoration first before we move into yards. Can you talk a little bit about what the street restoration will look like?
As I said before, with the concrete streets, once they take out the full slab, they won't just saw, when they're doing it, they'll probably just saw cut that area, but before they go to put the slab back in, they'll take out the full slab. And when they do that, they'll put in a granular bedding underneath of it and then pour the concrete on top of it. So that's about it for that.
Yeah, and like you said, that'll take about a week before it's drivable, right?
That's true. Yes, correct.
Okay. And then we were talking a little bit about the asphalt streets. That's closer to the school, isn't it? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. On the asphalt, they'll saw cut the edges where they're going to take the asphalt out. Once they go to put it back in, they'll put it back in a couple layers. And it'll be about a day or so before they can drive on that. It has to cool before they'll be able to drive on it.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Let's move into what the yard restoration will look like. So a lot of these property owners are probably wondering what's going to happen after we are done with the project. Can you talk a little bit about resodding and our policies with that?
Okay, so when we sod, we put back in the same type of sod that is already in the yard. So if you have zoysia or bluegrass or fescue, whatever you have in your yard is what will be going back. When we sod, we have to put it down while it's in season. So if we can't get sod from the sod yards, we can't put it in. Also, we can't put sod down if it's over 90 degrees because you just can't water it enough to keep it alive. If we're taking it out over the winter, we may not be able to get sod until spring to put it back in. we'll have to see how that goes. Once your yard has been sodded and it's been watered for 30 days, you'll get a sod letter letting you know that that we are done taking care of it, and it will be up to you at that point.
Perfect. Thanks, Deb. And some of this other restoration, if there are items that are not already in existing easements, the restoration on those items have already been determined through easement negotiations. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And then for folks that have plants or fences or things like that that are already located in those easements, what would be your suggestion for them to do when construction starts?
Well, if you have any favorite flowers, plants, bushes, or yard items like planters or something like that that you want to keep, you will need to move those out of the easement area so that we don't just rip them out. It is not our policy to take those out and put them back in. So if you have any flowers that it's in that easement that we're going to be digging in, you'll need to move those before we get there. So you have a heads up right now of when that'll be. As far as fences, once we are complete with the project, any fence that is there now, we will be putting back when we finish up restoration.
And those affected residents, they will get a little bit of a notification before construction gets to their property. Is that correct?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Dave, will you be sending out another notification since it's going to be so long before we get there? Will you be putting door knockers or anything out?
I can do that, but generally it'll be a week ahead of time. We'll start knocking on doors just to let them know we're coming.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. All right. And then just generally, Deb, actually, you know what? I think that's in the frequently asked questions, so we can save it for that. Anything else we should mention about restoration?
I believe that pretty much covers it.
All right, perfect. And if you have questions about timelines, that's when the information for the contractor and project manager, that's who you can contact specifically about that as well. So that covers the informational part of the presentation. We're going to move over into the question section. So I want to go ahead and remind everybody about that Q&A feature. For those of you on smartphones and computers, if you wiggle your mouse, you'll see the Q&A button. If you have any questions, go ahead and click or tap on that Q&A button, and you can go ahead and put in your questions. So we'll take it from the top, Deb. Will residents have, I know we discussed this already, but will residents have any access issues to their properties?
They should not. As we said, most of the work's going to be done in the backyard, so it shouldn't affect their driveways any.
And I know this is sort of nebulous, it depends on the weather and things like that, but generally, how long do you see restoration taking place?
It seriously just depends on whether we can get sod at that time. If we can get sod, then as they finish up an area, Dave, would you want to take the rest of this question?
Unfortunately, you're right. It really is just going to depend upon how the work breaks down and when we are able to move out of an area to what sod is going to be available and what the weather. Again, if it's a particularly wet winter to where we don't have an opportunity to grade, we're not going to be able to correct the grading to a finished quality that's going to allow us to put sod down. You need that right mix of cool enough weather, but yet dry enough to be able to do earthwork and grading.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. And then the last question we have on here is, will utility service, are you expecting utility service to be disrupted?
We are not. After Ameren gets those utility poles moved, we should not have any issues, but there's always the potential that there's something there that we don't know about. But we will work, if there happens to be a disruption where they potentially hit a line or something like that, we'll work to get it fixed immediately. The other utility companies work fairly fast with us if something like that happens.
Perfect. Okay. Okay. And on this last slide, I actually ended up putting, Deb, Jim's number under Dave's number. I read that email wrong. So Dave, could you say out loud your phone number? Because I think that's incorrect on there.
Yeah,
that's
my
good.
phone number is 314-771-3892.
All right, perfect. And that will make sure it's updated on the project webpage, which is located on the bottom of this slide as well, msdprojectclear.org/Brookshire. Here we do have Deb's information and Dave's information, their emails and phone numbers. Again, if you have specific questions about your property, these are the contacts, these are the numbers that you're gonna want, the emails that you're gonna wanna contact regarding those questions. A couple of last things I wanted to say before we move into the Q&A. A recording of this presentation will be put onto the website listed at the bottom of this slide, and all of the questions that we've gone through, they will also be updated on the slide as well. Okay, so I see one from Larry and Camille, and Deb, I think I might have to have you take this, or it might be Dave, I'm not sure which one. Will homeowners on septic systems have an opportunity to hook up to MSD, and how would they proceed?
Yes, it is possible. If you have a septic system, you need to let us know so that as we come through, that can be added in. So if you can send me an email with your address, that would be great.
Perfect, perfect. And I did get one question before the meeting started as well, and this was from Jeff. So he asked about the sequence of the workflow. So one of the specific questions he had was, when the contractor comes in, are they going to be removing the trees reach by reach, portion by portion, or are they going to come in and remove all the trees at once?
Dave, you want to take this one?
Most of the clearing and removal will be done at one time. There is a possibility that just because of how much clearing there is, the contracted arborist might take like Wedgewood Drive and all points north. He might make that one run and get everything cleared up in that area, and then make a separate mobilization to get all of Wedgewood and areas south. But the plan normally is they'll come out there and they will go and do all of the clear cutting and removal of the trees at once ahead of time.
Perfect. Thanks, Dave. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions on here. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds, see if you guys have anything left. But just remember, all of these questions and their answers will be updated on the webpage for this project, which is located at the bottom of this slide, msdprojectclear.org/Brookshire. We'll give it a couple more seconds. And again, if you do have those specific property questions, make sure you do reach out to the project manager or the contractor, and they will have a one-on-one individual conversation with you about your property specifically. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think we are good to end the meeting. Thank you everybody for joining us. Please, if you do have any more questions, let us know. Reach out to Deb, reach out to Dave, and we'll get those questions answered for you. Thank you, Deb, so much for all the information. Dave, thank you to you as well. And thanks to all of you for joining us. We hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, and have a good night.